Hi, this is Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. You're listening to On the Flip Side with Java John on WFIT, Public Radio for Brevard.
WFIT.
Hello, it's Ian Anderson calling to do an interview.
Yes, Ian. Hello, my friend.
Good, hi.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
All righty. Let me just check these levels real quick and see if we're good. Can I get a 1, 2, 3 from you?
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. You got a 4 as well. Look, testing is Ian Anderson calling. See how your levels are working out there on your board, I believe you call them in America. We call them desks, curiously here.
Oh, on the desk.
A mixing desk.
Yeah. All right, that looks good. Tonight, I am once again delighted to have as my guest none other than Mr. Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. Hello, Ian. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Very nice to hear from you today. Today, I believe we're focusing on a new release that Jethro Tull fans will be delighted to find out about if they don't already know. Almost exactly 40 years later, you've released the follow-up to the classic album, Thick as a Brick, aptly titled Thick as a Brick 2.
That's correct.
Could you please give us a little bit of information about the original Thick as a Brick and what prompted you to create this wonderful follow-up?
Well, it was originally recorded in 1972 as an intentional parody on the concept prog rock albums of that era, as put out and about by our peers like Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, King Crimson, and so on. So we were having a little fun making a bit of a spoof of that kind of genre. But behind every spoof or parody, there's very often some serious intent. And so this was disguised as a fictitious product of a child poet named Gerald Bostock, 8 years old he was at the time, reportedly. And, of course, it wasn't. I wrote the words and music, but we kind of went with that little notional spoof. Most people got the joke. Some didn't. Some took it completely seriously, but that's okay. And it was, quite a successful album. Yes. Obviously part of that prog rock era. But as such, I think it had its own life and its own place and things for a lot of people over the years. And for 38 of those 40 years since, I politely declined any request to come up with a sequel because I couldn't really think of a valid way to do it, without descending into mawkish sentimentality or producing something in a very retro kind of nostalgic styling, which I didn't want to do.
Right.
But a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, it occurred to me there was a way to do this and make an album for 2012 using the character of Gerald Bostock and what he might have turned out to be today, or indeed to look at several options of what he might have turned out to be today. And then doing that, I could make an album that was about 2012, that perhaps sets out to point to some of the differences between 1972 and 2012, as well as one or two things that remain sadly the same.
Yeah. Oh, I must say, I haven't had a chance to listen too many times, 2 or 3 shots at it, but I'm just in love with this recording. It is beautiful.
Good, thank you very much.
The album Thick as a Brick 2 is presented as being by Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson. Without a doubt, the musicianship on this disc is stellar, but why not a regular Jethro Tull project?
Well, it's what it says on the tin is perhaps less important than the contents, but I have a feeling that after so many years and something is billed as Jethro Tull, whether it's a concert ticket or an album, people have expectations of something that is kind of their idea of mainstream classic Jethro Tull material. And increasingly over the last 10 years, I've done a lot of projects and tours using my own name rather than simply just Jethro Tull, which I feel gives me more scope to be a little more adventurous in my in my output and choice of repertoire. So if I'm doing concerts with string quartets or symphony orchestras or acoustic tours or a special project like the Thick as a Brick tours, then I feel better using my own name, and it also means that those folk who simply come along, the beer-drinking buddies who turn up expecting to hear Aqualung and Locomotive Breath and Cross-Eyed Mary,
right.
Hopefully are going to stay at home.
Right.
And not come and disturb either me or the rest of the audience with their hoots, hollers, and whistles, which marred the performance of the original Thick as a Brick back in 1972, and was one of the reasons that I chose never to play it again in its entirety, because I just couldn't possibly cope with the idea that people were going to be restless and expecting to hear, their rock favorites from the limited part of our repertoire that would be considered rock favorites. And those folks, this is not a concert tour for them. It's not something they would enjoy. So my genuine suggestion in a helpful and fatherly way is stay at home and drink beer with your buddies while watching the basketball or the whatever you watch, baseball, football, whatever it is, and don't come to this concert because it won't be for you. This is for the people who think more in terms of being entertained by a more theatrical performance, which is a concert. So it's something where, as has been the case all the way through this UK tour, that people sit there entranced with what's going on, but they, apart from their much appreciated applause, even in some of the rough towns like Newcastle and Glasgow or Liverpool, I perform in front of an audience that is, wide-eyed and paying attention all the way through and no interruptions, which is great. And I'm sure it'll be the same when I get to the USA, because I've done lots of tours as Ian Anderson in the USA, and we don't ever have those intrusive problems which really ruin the show for the rest of the audience. It only takes 3 or 4 beer-drinking buddies to hoot and holler and whistle in all the quiet moments, and that just makes it a mess for everyone. So
I hear you.
That's one of the reasons, and there are many other reasons why I choose to call this Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson rather than simply Jethro Tull. But we have a limited period of time ahead of us, and as I say, what it says on the can and what's inside, that's at the end of it is me playing my music, which has been since 1968, and the name Jethro Tull, between you and me, is never something that I'm very fond of. Wasn't my idea to call the band Jethro Tull, and I always felt very embarrassed about it. As soon as I discovered a few weeks later that we'd been named after a dead guy who invented a seed drill, which was just a little bit hard for me to accept as a good name choice. But that's just between you and me. Don't mention this to anyone else.
I will not.
Okay.
Well, and thanks for clearing that up for me. That makes a lot of sense now.
No problem.
The whole project really seems as if it was a lot of fun to create, including the CD cover reflects that of the original album in that it resembles a local newspaper, but instead of the masthead reading is it Cleve or Clive?
St. Cleve.
St. Cleve. Instead of the masthead reading St. Cleve Chronicle, it now reads www.stcleve.com. And there is a corresponding website. How much of that is your own creation?
Every single word and most of the photographs. Yeah, it's something that, again, right from the very beginning when I wrote the album back in February of last year, that it was always going to be the case that I would not only think what might have become of the little Gerald Bostock guy 40 years later, but what might have happened to the St. Cleve Chronicle, the fictitious newspaper that formed the packaging of the original album. So in parallel to the music of the album, the packaging of the new album and its corresponding website, stcleve.com, that was always part of the plan. So it I wouldn't say it wrote itself, but it certainly was a very easy thing to work into in terms of the more upbeat and humorous elements that surround the sometimes serious music and sometimes rather edgy lyrics.
Right. Well, I am delighted to see that you are scheduled to perform a whopping 7 concerts here in Florida in September, and those are being billed as Ian Anderson's Thick as a Brick Tour 2, 2012. What can we expect from these shows?
Well, it was, again, always the intention to try to recreate very faithfully the original Thick as a Brick album in its entirety, and to use some of the elements of that original performance to present it in a more theatrical way, but also to extend that to the new album as well. So we make extensive use of audio-visual additions, and indeed an extra performer on stage who is an actor, singer, mime artist by the name of Ryan O'Donnell, who joins me in some duets and parts of the music, as well as providing other elements of on-stage activity, and helps me out with a lot of my little changes when I am fighting to switch from guitar to flute or this microphone to that microphone and switch on and off radio equipment, wireless equipment.
Right.
I mean, he's kind of, we work it into his shtick, his presentation, his characters on stage. But he's a great addition, and the audience seem to really like him, which is a huge relief. And that will doubtless, for our American friends, be part of the show that they'll remember as being something more rather than less.
Sure.
That they would come to see. And it's been quite a good 19 shows that we've just done in the UK, and things have settled down. And this is the kind of show where you can always be tweaking it and adding a little something here and there. And so we have, even with the audio-visual, the opportunity to change some of the segments and switch them for something else. And it's all kind of like it's not set in stone. It has this little areas in which you can make changes and develop it as you go along, which is kind of fun to do. So whilst overall it will be the same tour that gets to America in mid-September, there'll be quite a few different little elements in the show by then, simply because they've happened in the last 3 weeks in the UK. So I know that process will continue for a while. Sure,
and you guys will be, you folks will be well into the tour by the time you get to us. So that'll be excellent.
Yeah, we'll be halfway through it.
Wow.
In fact, yeah, because we'll probably finish up in the USA at the end of June, early July of 2013. So we have a long way to run with this particular project, and then by then there'll be a couple of new things on the not just on the drawing board, but probably on iTunes and Amazon by then, because hopefully during the months to come I'll be able to carry on with the writing and indeed the recording of a couple of new projects that we're working on at the moment too.
Nice. You did, as I mentioned in the beginning there, you do have seven shows coming in September in Florida, and I don't believe I've ever seen Ian Anderson or Jethro Tull do that many shows on one tour in this state. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, you're quite right. It is. I was just looking at that the other day, thinking, well, that's quite a lot of shows in Florida, because although we do normally on a East Coast tour, we frequently will play 3 or 4 shows. There's even more of them this time around. Some of which I've played before, but a few different places, and also give us the opportunity on the day off to drop into the Kennedy Space Center, where the band and crew will be visiting, courtesy of a friendly astronaut, taking us on the inside tour around there. So is one of my useful connections.
Very nice.
Is through the folks at NASA, and we look forward to having a couple of hours to be more than just tourists there. So it's kind of exciting. Everyone's looking forward to that, because everybody has a great appreciation for the huge effort to date on manned space exploration, and even my flute has been into space. So
yes,
it can go and see one of the big ships that actually brought it back. It came back in a shuttle, funnily enough. It went up
Right.
on a Soyuz cargo rocket, but it came back on a shuttle.
That's
it came back
wild.
on the second last shuttle to fly. So it's had the experience of going on the up elevator with a Russian ship and back down with the Trident tested shuttle missions. So good stuff.
Beautiful. And that Kennedy Space Center happens to actually be in my backyard.
Oh, really?
I live on Merritt Island. I'm in central Merritt Island, and it's on North Merritt Island. So we step out in the driveway and we watch the rockets go off.
Wow, there you go.
It's a very
well, you see,
beautiful
that's one of the thrills that for me as a child, growing up in the earliest days of space flight.
Sure.
That it's something that's been a constant fascination for me through the years. But any notions that I had about being an astronaut were dashed when I realized that I couldn't even climb to the top of a set of step ladders without feeling giddy. So I knew it wasn't for me to be a space pilot, but at least my flute's been up there, which is about as close as we can get.
That is wonderful. Have we got time for a few more?
Just a couple more, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just go right to the end here then. What I'm going to ask you is the last time we chatted, I asked you if there were any brief words of wisdom that you could share with our listeners before you departed. And I would like to ask you that question again.
Well, I suppose for all those listeners, be they young or old, who have any aspiration to being a musician, then I would offer up that perhaps the nicest way to enjoy your musical activities is really as an amateur. I think so much heartache comes for a lot of people who think in terms of becoming pop stars or rock stars, and the odds are just so incredibly stacked against them today. There is just so much of an overcrowded world in terms of people wanting to become that imagined successful music star, and it just isn't going to happen for the vast majority of people. I mean, when I started, maybe I had a chance, I don't know, 1 in 200 chance of being sort of successful as a musician. These days, got to be 1 in 2,000 or
Easy.
1 in 20,000.
Easy, yes.
It's just going to be way too unreasonable, I think, to hope or anticipate that kind of success. However, let's just remember that on my days off, and today is one of them, I've already spent about an hour of my day today for playing the flute for no reason other than I just felt like going and doing it.
Right.
And so, it's a great joy to be an amateur musician. I'm an amateur musician on 50% of the nights of the year. I'm just playing for fun.
Right.
I'm not getting paid to go out and do a concert. I'm just doing it because I want to do it. And I think that's probably the sensible and wisdom-filled notion that I could pass on is just enjoy the love of music on whatever level you find it, whether it's playing for yourself in your bedroom or playing for your family and friends, or playing as an amateur and playing to the public a couple of nights a week, or maybe if you do get lucky, playing to a few thousand people every night and having a queue of people waiting outside your stage door for autographs, then at some level you can find a lot of enjoyment. But you don't necessarily have to think in terms of it's all or nothing.
Right.
It's so much more liberating just to do it because you love it and it's fun.
For the love of the art. I couldn't have asked for better words of wisdom, Ian. It has been a pleasure once again to have a chance to talk with you, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you at least at one gig in Florida in September. I thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing you too. Take care.
Take care, Ian. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
What? Oh, shit.